Egor is going to be talking about his experiences at Nuance and how they moved from private data centers to the public cloud, which started as a lift and shift effort, but ended up with a complete cloud-native transformation that allows the company to deliver conversational AI services for 5G customer engagements. So, Igor, the ball is all yours. Take it away.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, and I assume you can hear me as well. Okay, so I joined Cisco recently, but in this talk, I would like to share my 3 years experience in Nuance, where we went through the public cloud and cloud native transformation with automotive and car tech business unit. Very short about Nuance. Nuance provide speech services, like example, text to speech, speech to text, or speech to meaning, or it's called NLP, to business customers, mostly in healthcare and call center or IVR space. But first of all, I would like to start with the why. Many of us, especially in Silicon Valley, love the technology and often adopt them because of cool factor. But Nuance has entirely different mentality. As they want to focus only on business problem first. And most executive see like infrastructure and platform effort, like IT tax. So for Nuance, it was two kind of reason to go with cloud native transformation. First of all, was business to increase agility, do a competitor pressure and market changes. For example, most of car manufacturer has 2-year cycle for development new models, and hardware and software delivery very well aligned with these cycles. But with regular software update or with the Air, like Tesla and mobile phones introduced, they basically raise customer expectation, and car manufacturer need to follow the same model to stay competitors. Also, business was sold that public clouds it's 2 times cheaper, and auto scaling will solve any traffic spike issues. Honestly, it was myth which I introduced even before I joined, and I couldn't find any proof for this. But we prove that with auto scaling would bring different saving for us with our traffic patterns, but only if we invest in application refactoring. Also, when you deal with voice, which usually consider like personal data, and all GDPR and local laws apply, forcing us to have like many regional deployments, and building local data center usually take long time and very often require too much labor and logistics to do this. A technical reason was we're using several languages for application development, and Docker was a great way to deal with RPM health. We used to run different application at the same host, and usually it's like bare metal servers, and ops team very often discover libraries conflicts when they try to shuffle application around and to optimize load, sometimes cost, or sometimes applied emergency fixes. Also, most of our application wasn't big enough, and we cannot allocate full host for them. So it always was Tetris game. If you remember early Kelsey presentation, to right placement for high availability or load perspective. Also, Kubernetes was very appealing for us in abstraction level, which allow us to use the same API across like public cloud and private data centers. So we went for this. And first attempt, we made like lift and shift, mostly because execs wasn't ready to make the change team structure. And with this approach, ops team took Puppet format and started building VMs usual ways. And they also prefer to go with legacy monitoring tools like such Census, Zenas, Elasticsearch, which they're very comfortable at. But from another hand, development team loves Docker and Kubernetes, and immediately organized DevOps sub-team, which was developed like internal deployment tools, evangelize and apply CI/CD model for all DevQI environment. But production still was managed completely by operation team. Also, we developed our own Kubernetes installers for private data center and Azure, which our operation teams was used to installing Kubernetes. In general, it was fairly successful, but some critical lessons was learned for us. We was able to reuse all Docker images and Kubernetes manifest across private cloud in Azure without any significant changes. Of course, some load balancer, ingress, and storage setting were different, but it wasn't a deal breaker for us. Also, we proved that we don't need to bring all legacy network appliances to the cloud. Example, in our case, HA proxy ingress controller with Azure load balancer was good enough as a FIFO replacement. Of course, except some customer-specific legacy integration, which we cannot touch or update due to long-term support contract. I believe it's usually take 5-10 years support agreement for car manufacturing, and during these 5-10 years, you cannot even touch API. Public cost, especially for DevQA and stage environment, it become like big surprise. Business was ready to pay for production, but it always complained about a Dev and QA environment. So we move some of them on-prem. Basically, this is where the stuff like Docker and Kubernetes help as well. Also, we start consolidate the clusters to get better utilization, and like everyone, we start to adopt more reserve instances. And the same way, we also try to negotiate better deals with Azure. Maybe because it's our luck, but we used to work a lot with Germany and China instance in Azure. And it always a constant fight about capacity, availability, extra paperwork, etc. So it was really ugly. We also learned that supporting our internal CD system requires several persons to work on this regularly, and they always late with like new Kubernetes features. It probably doesn't matter now because Kubernetes officially become boring. But it was critical for us at that time. We all saw like CSCF presentation about log management architecture with like Fluentd, Elasticsearch, and Kibana. But it is really expensive and hard to support multi-terabyte Elasticsearch cluster with like months of application log data, which you need to keep for compliance reason. It was really hard lessons for our ops team. But even with this model, our ops team still wasn't able to deploy new releases fast enough. But most important for us, development earns the trust from executives and proves that a new model will work. So after that. Some rework happens. I'm not mostly related to Seven Split. If not, you're familiar. Nuance basically spin-off automated business using unit into separate company, and which give us the chance to take the same journey again. But in this case, management was open to organizational changes, and we have the freedom to change and rewrite some component. But as usual, like new requirement was dropped on us as well. We ask to support on-prem deployment option. Our software basically need to be deployed inside customer data center or any major public cloud providers. We thought it was a great opportunity to Docker and Kubernetes to shine. Also, we asked to be PCI HIPAA and high trust compliance. In this case, we have some concerns because it's a gray area and very depends on like auditor perspective. So in the same times, we made a couple of like big adjustments inside the team. Sorry, just 1 second. First, we reorganize the team and give and delegate all DevOps and SRE functions to application teams, and they will take full responsibility for application lifecycle. This was bold move and was putting unnecessary operational burden to the development team. And to address this, we introduced common CI/CD pipeline with GitLab, Artifactory, and Harness. Harness is CD tools, if you guys are not familiar. And because all the tools was the same and pipelines very similar, it helps share the code, acknowledge across the teams. Also, it helps enforce policies. Example, like you cannot promote Docker image to production repository if it has high vulnerabilities with fixes, or all our application ingress deployments was the same and fully aligned with security requirement. We also convert ops team from project to service model and organize a real infra team. And this new team was fully responsible for Kubernetes and cloud services for all application teams. It means infra team responsible for full AKS lifecycle, and application team only care about its own Kubernetes namespace. Infra upgrade, in our case, is mostly like Kubernetes version or sometimes like Windows Note images changes, and security patches is constant headache, which we basically agree to share between infrastructure and application team. It means all application deployments have proper affinity and destruction budget rule, which allows infra team to gracefully reimage any node without any traffic impact. Most of you guys probably familiar in Kubernetes during the upgrade, you usually upgrade control plane first, and after they drain and decreate node one by one after. With this new model, infra team can push changes independently from application team. Also, all our developers was very familiar with high availability concept inside the cluster, but they usually lost with the disaster recovery concept, which basically always require from business continuity perspective or multi-region deployment. So to address this, we basically introduced approved cross-region deployment template and enforce everyone to follow them. And last one is about security, which is always headache. If previously all the security scan, all this like Veracode security scan was done ad hoc, often during the release when all code change is already done, it's always too late or too painful to make any remediation. To address this, we ask basically security team provide policies that must be applied for all this during this scan, and ask application team include these scans in CI pipeline and try keep them basically clean during a whole development cycle. So in general, it was great success, and with this model allow each team to deploy application to production with their own speed. Example, we have tools developers who update their applications like 10 times per day, or we have more mature services who do it like bi-weekly, usually after sprint scheduler. Also, we successfully deliver our SaaS and on-premise deployment. Rakuten is mobile is probably most famous, which we can talk about, and also pass PCI and HIPAA compliance certification. But I would like to share a couple of key factors which help us to succeed. First of all, we evangelize and apply infrastructure as a code everywhere for two reasons. First was labor. We have very small team responsible for 6 regions, and we can push all changes quickly only because all our regions and clusters was configured and set up exactly the same way. And we're very confident if change works in one environment, it usually works everywhere. The second one is compliant. For PCI, you need to keep record for every infrastructure change, and we found GitOps style works really great for both infrastructure and security teams. Also, we found that security requirement must be introduced to development process as early as possible. Example, like I said before, we made Rework and container scans like part of CI pipeline. It means everyone was aware about their state right away. Also, we found it's critical to build a friendly relationship between security and development teams. Security team, basically we make security team responsible for service like everyone else. They cannot come and say, no, like it's not our problem anymore. And also identifying SLI, SLO. I know many people are talking about this, like it helps to basically from availability point of view and track your availability of your services. But in our case, it helped to keep team spirit. What we found, we saw many times finger pointing situation when service belong different teams and they start basically blame each other. But after we started with simple golden signals at API gateway level, it was good enough until team become more mature and come up with something better or service specific. But you need to keep them separate from SLA because SLAs always require business or customer involvement, and very often they irrational or part of the client deal. But from another hand, you need to educate your business folk that every extra 9 in SLA will come with additional cost. In our case, it was like many times it was surprises. It was always easy to say, oh, let's have DevOps on SRE team, but it's really hard to build and organize them because of culture shift. Example, we have ops team which renames themselves to SRE, but continue to operate with the old model. Or we have another situation with developers who took DevOps role, but have no idea about Linux, Kubernetes, or database management. So it's always sizable investment to learn, to basically in education and teams and trainings. And last one. Many solution architects honestly believe that cloud documentation, in cloud documentation, cloud SLA, I don't want to say you need to ignore them, but you need to take it with a grain of salt and prepare for the worst. Very often, problem happens in your particular instance, and cloud providers is happy to reimburse for you for unexpected downtime, but not for your business reputation. So we found having like another region is the best way to deal with such scenario, at least in Azure. And if your business, especially if your business requires 3.9 and higher high availability. I think. Thank you. I'm happy to take any question.
Thank you, Igor. I appreciate that very realistic view on cloud and cloud providers. Do we have any questions from our audience? Okay, thank you, Igor. Katie, this recording. And then is it possible to unmute